We stayed last night in the Three Rivers Resort campground, which seems to primarily cater to whitewater rafters. There are mostly adults here, so I wonder what goes on in the rumpus room. This is Will Buchanan reporting for the Walk for Liberty. It's June 22nd, 2008, day 70. As you may have seen on the Incommunicado video I posted out of sequence a while back, we're now not only completely out of cell phone coverage area, which actually happened a few days ago, but also we're out of internet range as well. Because unless we get lucky and find a stray Wi-Fi connection, that campground we stayed at last night will probably be the last one we have internet access at for about 3 or 4 days. The satellite internet connection at that campground wasn't even that great anyway. It seemed the smallest cloud would cause the connection to be dropped, or at least slowed down dramatically. I had wanted to upload 2 daily videos while I was there, but I was only able to upload 1 because of the bad connection. I wonder if you could surf that wave. I received a request from a subscriber to discuss a particular topic on one of my walks. He wanted me to discuss the fact that just because there's inflation doesn't mean the government has to raise the tax rate over time in order to maintain itself. He said because tax is a percentage, the government will naturally collect more as the economy grows and as the population grows and inflation takes place. He then asked me to discuss what the fact that they have to raise taxes means. I would like to address his original request, but I'd first like to discuss something even more basic that seemed to be assumed as part of his statement. And that's the idea of inflation. One of Ron Paul's more brilliant moves was making inflation and the money supply one of the central aspects of his presidential campaign. Many people assume that the average American doesn't want to hear about economics. However, Ron Paul proved that Americans do care about the hidden and very insidious tax that inflation really is. Part of the problem in discussing inflation is defining inflation itself. Historically, the definition of inflation has been an increase in the money supply, which then results in an increase in prices. However, for whatever reason, the popular definition of inflation has changed in the last few decades. And many people now believe inflation means the increase in prices itself, and not the inflation of the money supply. The problem with that definition, though, is it shifts the focus of what the actual cause of the inflation is. If people think inflation is just the increase in prices, though, then they might think it's something that just naturally happens in a growing economy. However, the exact opposite is actually true. If the economy is growing, i.e., people are producing more, then that by itself will actually result in a decrease in prices. Because if there's the same amount of money out there, but more products are being produced, then that will result in each product costing less. Inflation is actually the increase or inflation in the amount of money the government is printing. And that is what actually causes the increase in prices, and is what the government doesn't want you to know. And inflation in the money supply causes an increase in prices, since if there's the same number of products out there, but more dollars trying to buy them, then each product will end up costing more. In any case, regardless of what the actual definition of inflation is, that increase or expansion in the money supply is what I want to discuss. The inflation of the money supply is bad for at least 2 reasons. For one, it causes people's accumulated wealth to lose value over time. Let's say you have $1,000 in the bank and that you're earning 1% interest on it. Then the problem is that if the government is inflating the money supply by 7% a year, then you're effectively losing 6% of the value of that money every year. That then forces you to go out and make investments, such as in the stock market, just to try to maintain the value of your wealth. Why should you have to do something extra, and which you might not want to do, just to maintain the value of the money that you've worked so hard for and saved? Note that this problem doesn't primarily affect the rich, who can afford to hire people to invest their money for them. It primarily hits poor and middle-class people. The second reason why inflating the money supply is bad is because the main beneficiaries are the banks, the government, and government contractors. They get the first crack at the newly minted money, and because it hasn't yet diluted the money supply in the economy, prices haven't risen yet. However, by the time it reaches you, the prices will have already risen and you'll be worse off. Why does the government or the Federal Reserve even need to control the money supply to begin with? You wouldn't want the government to manage the food supply or the clothing market, so why would you want them to handle such a critical issue as money? The fact is that people and companies interacting voluntarily in the free market can do a much better job of managing the money supply than the government can. So if not a fiat currency like the dollar, what is the best choice for a currency? I'm not sure what people interacting voluntarily in the free market will settle upon, but I'd say a good first step is allowing people to trade gold or silver as a medium of exchange. And the way to do that is a bill which Ron Paul has introduced to repeal the Legal Tender Act. The Legal Tender Act forces people and businesses to accept Federal Reserve notes, or dollars, in repayment of debts. And since debt plays such a key role in our society, this forces people to have to accept dollars when they might otherwise like to do business in some other medium of exchange. I say free people should be allowed to do business in any way they want to, and should not have to use what the government tells them to. I hope this doesn't come tumbling down on top of me. I didn't walk quite as far as my record from yesterday, but I did walk over 14 miles, which would have been my record on any other day. Here's my GPS location. This is Will Buchanan for blog.walkforliberty.com, signing off. So spitting in public's not sanitary. I wonder if they fine or jail dogs for peeing in public.